can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
Jumbo and caught! Jumbo Elliott! One-handed catch! Chris Paul gets running loose. Reese can't wait.
Not only is Ben Solak doing a great job at ESPN, but your mother is a Jets fan. How about that?
Big, long-suffering Jets fan. We were at a wedding in 2009 when Sanchez played the Chargers in the AFC Championship game, whatever it was.
Divisional playoffs.
Yeah, division round, that's what it was. And there was my mom was walking around the venue trying to find a TV. Let's say someone put a TV on this Jets game for me. She was stuck at a reception and she needed to see the game. That's my best Jets mom memory right there.
And we got to give a shout out to our own Quincy Enunwa, who
yes,
you talked about.
She was a big Quincy Enunwa fan. He does Jets content, so it's very exciting for her now. Yeah.
And I love this. Oh, okay, so you had a little bit of a free agency preview the other day on ESPN.com where you're talking about quarterbacks potentially who could be on the market with expiring contracts. Mm-hmm. One of them is Malik Willis.
Yep.
Can you talk about potential suitors there?
Yeah, I do think the Jets will be involved. One of the things that I've heard about from Glenn when he was the DC in Detroit, and then I think you've seen the fruit of this during his first year with the Jets, is that Glenn really likes mobility at the quarterback position. It's something that has given his defenses a lot of trouble, and defensive coaches tend to be attracted to the offensive things that give their defense a lot of issues, right? And so it was something that in Denver, in Detroit, Justin Fields gave him a lot of problems, then all of a sudden Justin Fields is a Jet. Tyrod Taylor, obviously, there's the backup. And so I think the mobility will be attractive to Aaron Glenn and to how they want this offense to be able to work with the quarterback running game. I do think that with Willis, a lot of it comes down to what the price tag is. I think you're going to see 5 or 6 teams involved, and then I think that the price is going to start to rise, and teams are going to kind of just fall off as they start to figure out what they want to do with their cap. Obviously, the Jets are in a spot where they have some money, and they can be aggressive in that market if they want to be. Willis is very, very tricky now. He's 6 career starts, right? And you go and you look at the history of guys who are, first 3 rounds selected, fewer than 10 career starts, signing their second contracts. It's not the big deals are not great, right? The Brock Osweiler was one such player. He signed that big deal with the Texans. That fell through. Kevin Kolb was one such player, right? With the Cardinals, he signed a 5-year deal. That fell through. Your best example of very few starts, signed a second deal, and it worked out is the Jimmy Garoppolo deal. And his starts came with the 49ers. He was already there, and they saw him before they gave him the big contract. And so I like a lot of Willis's film. I'm excited about him. He's a great physical talent. The history for guys like this who enter free agency and switch teams with very little experience, not too good. So it's buyer beware a little bit.
The Jets said they will exhaust all options at the quarterback position.
They better.
No surprise there. Who else is out there or potentially could be out there that might be a fit for this team where they're at right now?
Yeah. So I think that where we're going to see a lot of teams go is this free agent group is pretty thin, right? I think Kyler and Tua get released, but all teams are going to kick the tires on that and see what that looks like. But after Kyler, Tua, and Malik, I don't, Daniel Jones is going to get franchise tagged by the Colts. I don't see, a lot of the trickle down there. I think you're going to see a lot of teams go for the trade market for some of these QB2s because the draft is really thin on young guys, right? After Fernando Mendoza, it's a really, really weak group. And so you're going to see guys like Spencer Rattler, who I thought had a nice second season with the Saints, but then, Tyler Shuck is the new guy, just like by the new staff he steps in. Yeah. Will Levis, same thing, right? Who, was the film in Tennessee great? No, he loses the job to Cam Ward. This is still a guy who came out in the draft 3 years ago. Teams are going to have their grades on these players. Think about it, Tanner McKee. Think about it, Davis Mills. Think about it, Jalen Milroe, Anthony Richardson, Tyson Bagent. There's a lot of these young QB2s who are still on rookie contracts, which I think teams are going to look at the grades they had on those players and then look at the grades they have on QB3 and QB4 in this class and say, man, we've got better grades on Levis and Rattler and McKee, and they're going to look into trading the middle-round pick for that guy instead of using the middle-round pick on that upcoming rookie. And so Rattler, to me, is the name that I've circled bigly. Right?
Oh, really?
I think the improvement from year 1 to year 2 is substantial. I think play style-wise, you got a lot more calm, a lot more measured in the pocket. You can create outside of structure. The film for Rattler as a Saint was pretty solid, and they just moved on to Shuck because that's their future. That's the guy they wanted to commit to. And so Rattler, to me, is the name that if I were a GM, I'd be calling trying to get him off New Orleans.
So you talked about Glenn and how he likes quarterbacks that are mobile and how he had some difficulties defending against Fields when they were playing against each other in NFC North. Do you look at connections with Frank Reich now, the new offensive coordinator with the Jets?
A little bit. I think that the main thing for Frank and with Glenn moving him at this time, obviously the offensive coordinator change was kind of late and a little bit herky-jerky in the process. I think that Frank was less of a, we want this offensive philosophy, and more, we want a really steady hand at the helm. We want a guy who knows he's done it. He's done it for a long time. We're going to be able to be consistently good on that specific spot coaching-wise. The guy that I circle when Reich got hired was Alec Pierce, the rising free agent receiver, because Pierce was drafted by the Colts when Frank was still there, right? And Pierce is like an elite character guy, and Frank I think was a big fan of him as an individual. And then Pierce has obviously improved so much there in Indianapolis now under Shane Steichen, potentially entering the free agent market. I don't know if the Colts let him get there, but if they do, I do think you really have a void at target 2 right now next to Garrett Wilson, and Pierce is probably the best wide receiver on the market. Again, if the Jets want to be aggressive with their cap this year, then they can be in that Pierce betting market, and Reich knows the guy very well and knows how to make him work. And so Pierce was the guy I circled once they hired Reich.
Okay. The Jets have a ton of financial flexibility. I think maybe 4th or 5th most in the league as we get to that open window that starts on March 9th. Several holes on this team. What do you think they can address in free agency?
I think interior offensive line is going to be the spot where Simpson's up, Vera Tucker is up, and they've got a little bit of depth there. But this is a year where I think that draft-wise, it's not a super great year at the guard spot. I think free agency is a spot where you can be pretty successful plugging and chugging some of these interior players. So if they want to go that direction and go for the David Edwardses of the world and go for the Isaac Seumalo's of the world, like these were some of the more impactful guards of their positions over the last couple of years. I think re-signing either Simpsons or Vera Tucker also still to me makes sense as well, just in terms of having one of those spots at least held down before you start to approach the open market. And so guard to me is a spot where I thought the line's continuity, I thought the play of the tackles, I thought the line overall was quite strong last year.
Yeah.
And running game-wise, you saw that bear some fruit, right, in games where they were able to keep the scores competitive and be able to stay in their running game for 3 quarters, 4 quarters. I think that Bengals game, man, I mean, they were moving people off the line of scrimmage. And so I really liked what they had in the line. I would hope they would continue to address that seriously. So to me, that's a spot. And then I imagine cornerback depth. It's a little bit of a weird year for corner at free agency. It's a much better year for nickels and for slots. Obviously, Michael Carter out of the building. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is one of my favorite freaking players in the league, dude. He's so good. He's so physical. He's so aggressive. So they're probably already good at that slot spot. But I think on the outside, you can still see, guys like Jalen Watson's up this upcoming year. I think that he's a scheme fit for what Glenn wants to do. So corner and guard would be the 2 spots I'd circle.
How about safeties?
Yeah.
What does this class look like?
Safety is really, really, really deep. There's a lot of, a lot of different strokes for different folks, a lot of flavors. There's probably no, one elite guy. Kobe Bryant's coming out of Kansas City. Kobe Bryant's coming out of Seattle.
Yep.
Brian Cook's coming out of Kansas City. Jalen Thompson's coming out of the Cardinals. Nick Scott coming there from the Panthers. All these guys are clear starting caliber players. Again, a class where it's Caleb Downs, and then the fall off is pretty big at the safety spot. And so I would imagine they're pretty aggressively in the safety market. Now, if Glenn wants to continue to be a guy who plays a lot of man coverage and is able to be that single high guy, right? That's what you're going to see. I think your Brian Cooks and your Jalen Thompsons are more of that deep middle player that they're going to want to be. If they want to be able to be a little bit more too high and start to adopt some more of the changing structures we see, that's where guys like Kobe Bryant start to become more available.
How about the draft? A lot of diverse opinions here in Indy as far as what the Jets do at number 2 overall.
Man, trade back. I mean, there's a thick group, right? 2 to 6, 2 to 7.
Yeah.
When you talk about Reese, Styles, Downs out of Ohio State, I think David Bailey out of Texas Tech. You got a couple of receiver names in there. I'd put Ruben Bain out of Miami up there. You've got this dense group of dudes who I think are going to be graded out very similarly, where Mendoza's going to go. Some teams are going to have their elite grades on Reese and on Downs, but I think that chunk right there is a pretty thick chunk. So if you can manipulate it, move back a couple spots, still get your guy. Think about the way that the Browns did, go and get Mason Graham last year, whatever. That's great business. I don't know how thirsty the league's going to be to trade up this year, though. Because it's just not a year where it's going to be high demand. And so as far as years to have the second overall pick, this is it's not a good year to have it. There's no way to say it nicely. It's a bad year to have 2, just because it's the one quarterback. There's going to be no demand for quarterback trade up at 2. It's brutal. If you're making me stay there, making me make the pick, I'm probably taking Caleb Downs. That's the player I like the most. I've graded the highest. I understand. Safety versus edge rusher. Man, good player is a good player. Blue chipper is a blue chipper. This guy is a franchise-changing, math-changing individual. He's going to create turnovers for you, something the Jets desperately need. Caleb would be the guy that I would go for, but I would be taking a lot of calls coming up to the draft trying to move out of the spot.
Man, that's a fascinating take as far as Downs is concerned, because the old school adage is non-premium position, right? But it's a premium pick. But with that being said, are we moving to more of a positionless game on the defensive side of the ball where, hey, listen, man, if this guy's a great player, if he's an elite player, it doesn't matter when you take him.
So I don't think it's positionless so much as we've learned how to maximize people at different positions, right? It wasn't hard to figure out how to maximize an edge rusher, right? Put him over there, put everybody else over on this side of the line, and tell them, all right, you pick where to slide, right? This is Myles Garrett. You want to double team him? Go for it. We're going to have 3 1-on-1s over here. You're going to have to slide to the numbers. Myles Garrett's a 1-on-1. It didn't take a genius to figure out how to maximize an edge rusher. Safety, it takes a lot more machinations in terms of how you structure your defense to weaponize that guy, right? And this is one of the things that Mike McDonald in Baltimore with Kyle Hamilton and now in Seattle has really shown us is, okay, I can build this around having, these 10 players who are nice and versatile, like line up different spots, and then this one safety is going to be able to play linebacker for me on one down, an edge rusher on the next down, and slot corner on the next down. He's going to, kind of unlock my versatility here. Now, Caleb is not Kyle, and he's not Nick Monwari. He's not long like that. So you don't want him playing up on the line of scrimmage, playing edge in the same way. So you can't go and copy-paste a Mike McDonald defense, put Caleb in the Kyle spot and say, aha, elite safeties. Like, it's very different body types. And that's why, like I say, it's harder to maximize a safety than it's to maximize an edge rusher, because safeties line up in different spots, have different responsibilities. What Caleb does in the middle of the field on passing downs, where he's able to play with his eyes on the quarterback, is something like I have never seen at the college level. Kyle was not doing this, man. Like, in terms of coverage as a robber player, as a zone player, eyes on Carson Beck, making him wrong, taking away multiple routes, figuring out when he's faking, figuring out when he's trying to pump fake, where he's trying to move him off to. The football IQ and the instincts on Caleb are like a sight to see, man. They are a revelation. You got to build your defense around it. You got to be willing to say, we're going to build our pass coverages around playing too high or being able to play one robber and putting this player here. That costs a lot. That requires a lot of defensive work and ingenuity. For a coaching staff, that's a challenge. So I would go get Caleb right there, but you need your staff to be willing to maximize that player in a way that's a lot harder than Arvell, Reese, go fast. Go hit that guy or whatever. That's a lot easier to do.
What do you make of the receivers in this draft? Everybody's high on them.
Yep.
It seems like an awfully deep group. But from a Jets perspective, you got Garrett Wilson. You talk about Pierce before. Do you think there's going to be a run on receivers like the middle of the first round if the Jets keep that 16th pick?
So there's no such thing as a bad receiver class, in my opinion. Like, we'll never, ever see it again. There's just the college ranks have gotten too good at throwing the football, and they throw it to just such a variety of dudes, right? There's like a 6'5", 210 guy who's high volume, and then there's like a 5'7", 165-pound guy, high volume, and everybody in between, right? Your Tank Dells come out, and your Drake Londons come out, and every guy sized in between is playing receiver and succeeding, right? So we've gotten so good at developing receivers with 7-on-7 football, and 20 years ago, you couldn't throw the football in college. Go watch old Blake Sims, Alabama, right? Like, they couldn't throw the ball, and now everybody can succeed in the RPO game, what have you. So we're never going to see a bad receiver class again, because the development, there's just way too many guys available. To me, this is it's one of the deeper classes of this particular draft. I think it's a below average receiver class relative to past years, right? And so if you put Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, and Mekhi Lemon up against 2024, when it was Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors, they're not going before those three guys. I think they're going more like BTJ range, right? Where it's mid-teen sort of a spot. In this particular draft, it's just simply not a strong draft. There's no other way of skinning the cat. Yeah, I think you're going to see Tate be a top 10 guy, Tyson be a top 10 guy. I don't think we're going to see the sort of run on receivers that some people are prognosticating right now, always in February and March. Like I said, there's so many different guys that people like. So one guy thinks that Omar Cooper is going round one, the next guy thinks Zach Branch is going round one, the next guy thinks that Casey Concepcion is going round one. It feels like there's all these receivers, when in reality, one or two of them will go, and the rest of the guys will kind of go round two.
Enviable position for Darren Mougey to have that first pick in round 2.
Mougey, man. Everybody envies Darren Mougey. Darren Mougey's got about 19 first-round draft picks to work with. Mougey, I best piece I did all year was my trade deadline reaction piece. I owe Darren Mougey a drink if I see him here in Indianapolis. That trade deadline was electric. It is a very good spot, I think, always to have that first pick in the second round if you're a good trader. And so far what we've seen from Darren Mougey is that he's a very good trader.
Man, you got an encyclopedia of knowledge. It's like a stack of them. But with that being said, how much do you factor in this equation as far as the Jets build that you got the financial flexibility, you got the draft capital this year, but you have the 3 first-round picks in 2027. You want to win next year, but you want to have a sustained winner.
Yeah, I want to walk into next year confident that when I spend all my picks to go get the first overall pick to go take a quarterback, that the environment for him is correct.
Okay.
So I feel really good where I'm at bookends-wise. Membu and Fashanu, I think you feel great about where you are tackle-wise. We'll see where you are running game-wise. A lot of that's going to come down to what the Breece Hall contract does look like, doesn't look like. If not Breece, then whom, what have you. But so I think there's the obvious question there at running back. I would want to feel a lot better about target 2 and target 3, right behind Garrett Wilson. And even then, I think you got to feel like Garrett comes back and he's healthy and you see it, right? And so I expect them to aggressively pursue a guy who can be a good target 2, if not a spot wide receiver 1. So you think about the Alec Pierce of the world, or you think about if they take a Jordan Tyson or a Carnell Tate. Like, Tate was never wide receiver 1 at Ohio State because of Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah.
But he had those games where he was just because of coverage-wise, and he got the targets and whatever. So, Tate makes a lot of sense in terms of being able to step into those shoes when he needs to if Wilson's banged up or what have you. So I think you're going to see them be serious about target 2, and then target 3 becomes a Do we want Mason Taylor to develop, and do we want to be a multiple tight end team? Do we want to have a more traditional slot receiver? Are we going to go get ourselves, one of these Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M sort of players who can win from the slot, these Omar Coopers at Indiana who can win from the slot? But to me, like, that's the number one thing to address is I want to feel better about my targets trickling down from Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, such that 2027, when I go and I spend all those first-round picks on whoever the quarterback is, Arch Manning, then, I feel like the environment is good for him to develop moving forward.
If the Jets are taking a flyer on a quarterback in this draft later, whether it's day 2 or day 3, who do you like the best right now?
Nussmeier is my guy out of LSU. I think the 2024 film was legitimately good. Now, he's undersized, and the arm is never going to, expand the field to its limits. But 2025, he comes out, he's banged up. The obliques hurt all year. I think the line from his camp, and he's going to be telling teams, man, throw all of 2025 away, look at 2024. And I think when you look at 2024, I think it holds up relative to, the best we've seen of Carson Beck over the last 2 years or Drew Aller over the last 2 years. To me, that 2024 Nussmeier is the film I can look at the most and say, this can hang at the NFL level. And so I think, Ty Simpson will certainly have his guys and have his believers. I think Ty's above Nussmeier pretty comfortably, but we talk about the true middle round guys. Nussmeier's the guy I go to.
Ben Solak, you got to be reading him on ESPN and watching him as well. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Now joined by a good friend of the show. That's in New Paltz.
Yeah,
that's Charles Davis
too.
back in the house. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate being called a good friend.
I like how you represent the hometown out here too in Indianapolis.
Got to represent the Paltz, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Those are the formative years. Welcome to the Mid-Hudson Valley, everyone.
So Aaron Glenn spoke today at the podium. He said he's going to take over defensive play calling duties.
Boy, there's a shocker. Hold a second. Let me fall out of my chair as I'm surprised to hear that announcement.
So your thoughts, though?
I'm not surprised at all because, the way things went last year, when things go like that, you tend to go back to, this is why I got the job in the first place. Yeah. The second part of it is you rely on yourself when things are tough. Right? When your back's against the wall, I better do what I think I do really well. Doesn't surprise me one bit. I mean, my sarcasm on the whole thing. I won't be the first. I won't be the last to be, oh, really? He's going to take over play call?
Sure. Yeah.
Of course he
will. He just made it official.
Yeah. But, right? We all expected it.
Right.
So this is not a surprise. But what you have to have in that situation, if you're going to take over play call as a head coach, you got to have the strong person to run your room during those times when you got to go be head coach.
Yeah.
That's what you got to have. That person's paramount for you.
Do you like the pairing now? Him and bringing in a seasoned offensive coach in Frank Reich, who not only played this game, but he called signals, and he was a head coach.
Been head coach.
Yeah, right.
And had success in Indianapolis. He had been I believe he was the last head coach in Indianapolis to go to playoffs. 2020.
There you go.
So, Frank has been around the demeanor, the evenness of who he is, the intelligence, the tenacity, and what I think is underrated is the competitiveness.
No.
You can go back to the playing career. You've probably heard all the stories.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in Orchard Park.
We remember the comeback against the Oilers. Go back to Maryland.
Against Miami.
I played against Frank in the first ever Citrus Bowl in Orlando, Florida. Boomer Esiason was the starting quarterback. He separated his shoulder in the second quarter. Frank Reich came in and played. We beat Maryland in a close game. Frank played well. The next year, we played them again in the Sun Bowl. Frank was the starter all year long. During the season, they had the biggest comeback in NCAA history against Miami, led by Frank Reich.
42-40.
We were up 21-0 at the half. They beat us 28-27, led by Frank Reich. So I need therapy when it comes to Frank Reich. But I also am a big fan of his. I think he's well respected. The surprise to me was he took that Stanford job on an interim basis.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought when he said interim basis and told Andrew Luck 1 year, I thought that meant he was going to do that, and that was that. But the tug of this game is too much.
Yeah.
And I think the Jets are going to benefit from having Frank around.
Yeah, doesn't that speak to the relationships that he built over time because he coached Luck, and Luck is the GM at Stanford, and he said, hey, man, I need some help. Will you come back? And,
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
You build relationships, you have trust in each other, and you also understand that person can help you be better, get better, all those other things. Then if you are on the Jets and you are a quarterback or you are an offensive player and you start making your phone calls and you start tracing it. And someone told me once that if you apply for a job with the FBI, okay, and you want to be an agent or whatever, they ask you for 3 names. Give me 3 names of people who know you. And after you give them those 3 names, they will retrace your entire history almost to conception.
Yeah.
Okay? Ask around, guys, and just trace Frank Reich's history and take it back through Philadelphia, San Diego, all those places, and find out if people didn't get better under Frank Reich's tutelage.
Yeah. Been working with a ton of quarterbacks.
Quarterbacks. Hey, listen, he had a different quarterback every year.
Yes.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And had some pretty darn good
Yeah,
success.
they made the playoffs a couple times.
Phillip Rivers was his last one. That was the last playoff team he had. But, look, Jacoby Brissett had a big year with him. I mean, this guy he can coach him. He might be able to, he might be able to coach me, and I might be able to throw for, 5 or 6 yards.
All right, so your time is limited, Charles. What should the Jets' approach be at the quarterback position? Since we're talking about Frank, GM Darren, Mougey, and head coach Aaron Glenn, of course, said that we're going to exhaust all options. When you just kind of look at the landscape,
aren't a lot of options.
Veteran trade and then draft,
Yeah.
And then everybody looks big picture too. But you want to win games now, but also you had those 3 first-round picks in 2027.
Absolutely. The hard part with that is you can project those first-round picks in 2027, but we don't know what's going to be there.
Yeah.
And what makes it very simple is I'm going to interview you for a quick second. Going into last season, what was the word from college football about the quarterback class of 2026?
Oh, it was going to be big time.
Loaded.
Yes.
Here we are getting ready for the draft 2026. How good's quarterback class 2026?
There's some questions. Let's just say that, right?
So that's my point.
Yeah.
I may have 3 picks in 2027. We may think it's going to be a loaded up. We just don't know. Where are we going to finish? What's going to happen? Does it fit? You can't wait on that. So what does that mean? This year's free agent crop of quarterbacks in the NFL. Not great. Because the options aren't terrific. I don't think you're running it back and talking Aaron Rodgers into coming back, and he's 42 years old, right? 41 years old. Where are you going to go to get that quarterback, as you said, hey, we want to win games right now?
Yeah.
That's a tough one for you, all right? This year's draft, you may have the number 2 overall pick, but you're not going to take the number 2 quarterback in this year's draft, I don't believe. So that's where it becomes difficult and dicey. So developing people going to be a big deal as far as I'm concerned, because I just don't see any way possible the Jets are going to take a quarterback at number 2.
And we got to let you get out of here. But your latest mock draft had the Jets actually taking Arvell Reese.
Yeah, take a great player.
Yeah.
Right? Off the ball backer, shades of Micah Parsons.
Ooh.
Because remember, Micah was an off the ball backer with the idea we're going to make him an edge rusher. He didn't do a lot of that until his last year at Penn State. Reese was a 1-year starter at Ohio State. But, boy, was that 1 year something. Because people knew him, but they didn't know him. And by the time the year was over, Matt Patricia, defense coordinator, said, yeah, everybody tried to figure out what we were doing. At the beginning of the year, they weren't doing that. He developed. He exploded. His best ball is ahead of him. But also, you could be looking at a Reuben Bain. You could be looking at a David Bailey. Those types of guys are in play for the Jets because there's not a single place on this roster that there's not an opportunity to get better.
You got to go. But real quickly, just name the best position groups in this draft class because the Jets have
Edge rushers.
Okay.
Edge rushers, defensive line. Wide receivers. Okay. The early group of corners, pretty darn good. Right? And I think you can find later round off the ball linebackers because I think where you're picking, it's really early for just strictly off the ball. You got to have an impact guy who's going to go get your quarterbacks.
Great seeing you, sir.
Great to see you as well. Thanks for having me. Go New Paltz.